Drop this plane.
Welcome to the Buffalo Sports Conversation Room. I'm your host, Jamie Malloy, and it's good to be back, ready to talk Week 18 football. But first, I'd like to bring in my co-host, Joe Dalio, then our special guest, Steve, the Bills car guy, who most of you are familiar with as he has joined us many times before. So without any more hesitation, here's Joe. Hey, Joe. Happy New Year. How's it going?
It is going very well. Happy New Year to you, Jamie, and to all watching here. Exciting. Kind of missed the show here because it's been a couple of weeks. So, looking very much forward to getting back in the swing and talking some Bills and some exciting things happening in the NFL.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things happening around the NFL and for our Bills. 4-game winning streak, and this week's game is going to be for the division title. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And it's on at 8:20 p.m. nighttime on NBC for Sunday night, which we're going to be waiting all day for.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be tough. But, just make it that much better, I think.
Yep. So then now let's bring in our guest, Steve at the Bills car guy.
Hey guys,
hey Steve, how you doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you both. Great to see you, and I cannot believe we're getting ready to talk Week 18 already.
Wow. I know, but how were your holidays?
They were wonderful. They were very busy. I have 2 kids now, so I think the joy comes as a parent just watching them enjoy the holidays and seeing the wonder in their eyes, and it was everything I hoped and imagined it would be. So hope you guys had good holidays as well.
We did. Thank you for asking.
Definitely.
So are you guys now ready to talk about the last Thursday night football game of 2023 with the Jets taking on the Cleveland Browns?
Ready.
So Joe, what do you think about the Browns making the playoffs by beating the Jets 37-20 and with Joe Flacco out of all quarterbacks?
Yeah, I got several takes on that. Beginning of the season, we didn't see this coming, right? The Browns were probably picked for last place in the division by most, including me. I can't speak for you guys, but I did not see this happening. And maybe I'm going to take some criticism for this, but my favorite part about this is that it's all happening without Deshaun Watson. I love the fact that Joe Flacco is basically resurrecting a career here at, what is he, 39 years old, and just playing some of the best football of his career. I mean, again, over 300 yards in this game, looked like a leader, looked like a quarterback capable of taking a team on his shoulders. I mean, he's got a great supporting cast and team, the Browns all year have had an amazing defense. So, it's a team effort here, again, just all parts of the offense. I mean, tight end, Njoku getting like 130 yards, 22 yards average catch. So, him doing a great job. Again, the defense doing amazing. So this is a good team, and it's a fun team to watch, and it seems like a very close team, and again, I feel like I can root for them now, and we'll see how far they can go, but definitely another impressive victory for the Browns this week.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. Steve, your thoughts? I think it's fun to see Joe Flacco playing. And obviously being 39, I'm 39 too, so that's kind of cool to see him doing that. And he's actually, it looks like he's having a pretty good time doing it. So I'm happy for him. It's a lot easier again to root for them without Mr. Watson behind the helm there. But like Joe said, he kind of expected the Browns to be in last. I didn't necessarily expect them to be in last, but I'll tell you what, I didn't expect the Bengals to be in last in the AFC North. That's for sure. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are kind of where I thought was going to be the bottom tier of the, because I didn't think Kenny Pickett was a great quarterback. But they're like a cockroach, man. They're just sticking around and they're not going away. They just keep finding a way to kind of keep us on our toes here. And I can't believe it's coming down to week 18 where, we're up against it with the Steelers. Who would have thought? So, right. But the Browns, they're a good story. We'll see how they do in the playoffs. The Chiefs have had struggles in the regular season before and then got into the playoffs, and they've got playoff experience. So it's hard to say what a team's going to do once they get into the playoffs. We've seen one seeds get into the playoffs, have their bye, and then collapse in round 2 of the playoffs. So it's really hard to say what the Browns are going to do. It'll be interesting to see who their matchup is week 1 of the playoffs, the wild card round. But they're a fun story. I as a Bills fan, I wouldn't want to face them. They're one of the teams I would kind of like to avoid until later in the playoffs. That's where I'm at with them. And anybody who beats the Jets, I'm good with. I like it.
Yeah, I actually think the Browns are a cool story. Their defense is really the cool story. And as you know, Jim Schwartz is their defensive coordinator. He was our defensive coordinator. And he's always had very well disciplined, well-coached units. Like, they're going to be able to get after the quarterback. But the one thing they do well with Jim Schwartz is a good run-stopping defense, a run defense. That's what Jim Schwartz has always had. He runs that wide 9 gap where you just get big defensive tackles in the middle to help stop the run along with your edge rushers to sack the quarterback. So it's a good healthy medium between getting sacks and stopping the run.
Definitely.
Sure.
It's one of the few good parts about my fantasy team this year was having the Cleveland defense, but not much else went well with that. But that's for another time and another place.
So now turning our attention to the Saturday night Detroit Lions at Dallas Cowboys 8:00 game, with Dallas putting it out 20-19 in the fourth quarter. We will now just have to wait and see what their rivals do to see if they can win the NFC East, because I think they're going to beat the Commanders. One of those things I think are going to happen. If Dallas doesn't beat the Commanders, I think the Giants can beat the Eagles this week, but we'll get into that later. So, Steve, what did you think about that Lions Cowboys game coming to that controversial ending there?
I feel like we've talked about controversial endings a little too often this year. Not because we want to, but because we have to. And I feel like the controversial endings at games are getting to a point where they're it's like they're not even trying to hide it anymore. They're just being blatantly obvious, like messing things up to determine a winner in this case, I mean, I will say, if I was the Lions and, that penalty happened, like they still could have kicked an extra point and tied the game and went to overtime. But I think Dan Campbell's got some cojones on him, and he definitely, they're another fun story, and they're fun to root for too. And they're an NFC team that if my team gets eliminated, I'll be pulling for the Lions all the way. But I do think that controversial call was just. Obviously, we as fans watching on a broadcast don't know the full story of everything that happened. But again, with the way the year has gone, I like to take the benefit of the doubt with the refs that there was something sketchy going on there. So that's I would say otherwise if it was the first kind of weird thing that happened with the refs this year, but because it's been more of a commonality with all the games, I think it's something that, the league should look at in depth and figure out what's going on here. Like, it's not a good look, especially on a primetime game, because everybody saw it. So it's not a good look.
See, I do give the league credit. At least now they're starting to realize that it's getting out of control, and they're taking the initiatives and some stuff to look at the end of the year. Like we've always criticized Goodell and like Troy Vincent for not doing that for how many years he's been commissioner. But I think ever since Goodell got his extension, I think he's starting to get better with things. Like, obviously, he's going to look at the kickoff rule, the fair catch rule from the 25-yard line, because they knew they made a mistake. They were going to try it for a year, and now they're going to look at it. And at least the good news is they're not going to ban the tush push. Troy Vince had already said that, which is good. So I think they're starting to get better on what they need to look at now, because it's gotten to a point where enough's enough.
Yeah,
but
higher full-time refs too. I think that's one thing I just say real quick too is like the league has so much money. Like hire full-time refs. I think that's something they need to really look into doing. Maybe that will correct some of the issues. But that's my last sense on that one there. But it's like beating a dead horse with these refs.
And I'm going to completely agree with that. I mean, how many years now have we been saying that the NFL needs to do something, and there's just these games get bigger. There's more money involved, more hype involved. And, again, I'm sick of seeing the refs get in the way. As Bills fans here, we're certainly used to it, and we've had our share. But it's just getting to the point where, again, it shouldn't be determining big games. And I've been saying that, and I'm certainly not the only one. Everybody's been saying it, that it's about time just to get full-time referees here. And hopefully that, would, maybe solve the problem at least a little bit. I mean, people are going to make mistakes all the time, and we get that. And replay, helps with that a lot. But again, this is just happening way too often, and putting a damper on some of these great games. I had a feeling the Lions obviously would give the Cowboys a fight. I talk here all the time, and everybody in the NFL knows what a crazy home field advantage Dallas has, outscoring opponents 40-15 before this game. But again, I think the Lions are probably the toughest test they've had coming in. But I still thought Dallas wins this game by a touchdown, maybe 6-7 points. But give credit to the Lions, and they could have easily won this game. And again, I don't have a problem with the call at the end either, as far as, going the bold route here and trying to win the game instead of tie it. You can argue it either way, but I have no problem with that. And I appreciate the willingness to go for it there. But, give credit to the Lions. I mean, I'm someone who said in the beginning that the Lions wouldn't make the playoffs. So here they are, not only making the playoffs, but, winning their division, and they're one bad referee call from potentially being the second seed in the NFC. So as far as Dallas is concerned, them I did pick to win the division, and I think they will. And again, with the Cowboys getting home games in the playoffs, that could be a dangerous thing. But, again, it's the Cowboys. They could easily screw it up too. So, again, entertaining football, just disappointing that it came to an end like that.
I kind of hope the Cowboys get the home field advantage. And then, if the Bills can make it to the Super Bowl, they'll be playing the Cowboys on the road. I'll take that again.
Yeah, there you go.
But, yeah, so anyway, let's move on to the Sunday 1:00 New England at the Buffalo Bills game. This is our game, folks, here. While it wasn't Josh Allen's prettiest game thus far, it sets up a Buffalo-Miami matchup for the AFC East title. Joe, what do you think about Buffalo giving up that first opening kickoff return for a touchdown? Were you a little shocked with that?
Yeah, it was kind of like reverse deja vu, right? Wasn't it against the Patriots last year after the Hamlin game, where Hines took the first kickoff all the way, and that was against the Patriots. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the same thing here. Obviously not after an emotional game, but still, I was quite surprised and just appreciated the irony of that whole play of the Patriots returning. But I'm going to say this. If I were the New England Patriots, I would be very offended, okay? And hear me on this. We just celebrated, a lot of us celebrate Christmas, right? And we give gifts to people. Now, wouldn't you be very offended if you kept trying to give somebody a gift and they wouldn't accept it, right? That's kind of offensive. Well, there were hundreds of times here where the Patriots attempted to give the game to the Bills, and the Bills just refused to accept it. So I'd be very offended if I was them. We say on this show all the time, a win is a win. So of course, I'm sure the Bills will take it, and it's kind of encouraging that offensively, A lot of players had far below average games, and yet they were still able to pull out a win. Josh Allen had, possibly his worst game of the season, although he did run the ball very well. He had 44 yards rushing, a couple of touchdowns. So running wise, Josh Allen was Josh Allen, but obviously passing wise, it was a struggle. And, Stephon Diggs, only 24 yards. And, James Cook had a below average game as well. I think he only had like 48 yards. Overall rushing, I think the Bills had just over 100, maybe 103 yards for the game. So, again, the fact that amidst all that, they still managed to win this game, I guess is a little bit of an encouragement. But, again, if I'm the Patriots, I'm upset because the Bills never accepted their gift and they just barely won that game. So, but a win's a win.
Exactly. Steve, your thoughts?
I think it was one of the worst offensive performances we've seen from the Bills, and they still put up 27 points. Now, I know 7 of that was a touchdown from the defense, from Rasul Douglas, who is probably the greatest acquisition of any manager midseason that I've seen in the past 10 years.
Right.
But I do think that obviously they gave the Bills plenty of chances. The Bills got the ball in Patriots territory with almost every single one of their turnovers. And one of them ended up being a pick six. But I think other than that, they walked away with field goals each time. Maybe I can't remember exactly how it went. But the Bills should have won that game by 30. I mean, if their offense was clicking the way it should. That's the scary thing for other teams about the Bills, though, is we all know their potential on offense and their potential on defense. Their potential on defense showed exactly in the first half of that game, especially on Sunday. And their potential on offense, we saw that against Philly. If they put that together, there's not a team in the league that can beat them. But if they do what they've done plenty of times this season, any team in the league can beat them. And that's the scary thing. We need them to click. And I think that losing the games that they lost when they lost them back in the beginning of the season kind of taught them a good lesson. I actually called WGR today and talked to them about the Bills and said, I kind of hope the Steelers and Jags win on Sunday. I know that sounds crazy, right? Because the Bills play incredible football when their back's against the wall. And if they know they're facing elimination going into Miami on Sunday night, I kind of feel for Miami. I'll never actually feel for Miami, but I kind of feel for Miami in that point. Is if the Bills go in with their backs against the wall, that's a tough game for Miami to win. I will say I'll feel a little better if the Steelers, if the Steelers do lose and one of the Jags lose, so the Bills are kind of guaranteed a playoff spot. But I do like that thought of a 2 seed and getting some home games in the playoff up until the AFC Championship if they make it there. So that was a game on Sunday that is I'm glad to forget it. I won't watch a replay of that one because it was pretty ugly. But that defense really, man, they were smothering that Patriots offense in that first half, and that was a beautiful sight.
Yeah, it was a really beautiful sight. And I think God, they do that against Miami like they did the first game. They should be able to take care of business. And then the cool thing about getting the 2 seed, it means that Kansas City's the 3 seed. So that means Kansas City would have to come to Buffalo if the Bills win their first playoff game instead of the other way around. So we get a break with that.
That would sure be a nice thing to see.
I'm sick of playing games in Kansas City, so I'm hoping it happens that way. Where if there's a matchup between the Bills and Chiefs, it would be here.
It would be because we would be the 2 and they would be the 3. So
Mahomes has never played in Buffalo, right?
He has once.
Oh yeah, it was that first year we lost to them, right? In the
COVID year.
Yep.
Yes,
like 38.
But he's never been on the road. But he's never played on the road in the playoffs. But until this year would be the first year that they would have to go on the road.
Okay,
because they're going to have a home playoff game. It's just a matter of who they're going to play next.
Well, they might not. They might lose in the first round of the playoffs. Just saying.
Right.
They're not playing very good football right now. So
they're one of those teams that scare me, though. Again, I talked on a different show in the past, about Tom Brady, and he was on the decline, and he wasn't playing well, and the Buccaneers were really struggling. And I just had this recurring nightmare that he resurrected and all of a sudden got hot at the right time and took the team to the Super Bowl again. And, the NFL's scripted that way. But, I have that reoccurring nightmare now with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I mean, they are playing some, far below average football now. And they're playing the type of football that's going to get them bounced from the playoffs. But I'm just afraid there's going to be some kind of spark. There's going to be some kind of crazy thing that happens that all of a sudden those sleeping giants wake up and get hot at the right time and just start beating everybody and go to the Super Bowl again. I pray that it doesn't happen, but I just have that recurring nightmare that it does. And there's just one spark that's going to set the whole team ablaze and get them going again. But, hopefully I'm totally wrong, as I often am. And we don't see that. So we'll see.
Yeah, but Joe, the one thing that your recurring nightmare, it may not happen. I don't think they don't got the receivers. I mean, I know it was like last year that they won the Super Bowl with the same receiving core, but you could clearly see that their receiving core this year is being exposed for not being that great. So that's the one thing. Brady, at least, had a receiving core that he could depend on. I don't think this receiving core could get it done again like last year. That's the thing.
And
yeah,
Travis Kelce. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm saying they're certainly not playing it like it, and I think they lead the league in drops, if I'm not mistaken. So, hopefully that continues, as well. But
that could hurt them though if they have to go into Buffalo in the snow too if they play them. So that's the thing.
And Travis Kelce's showing his age too. We got to remember, I think he's older than Gronk, and Gronk retired 2 years ago now. So, you got to remember, he takes a beating. He's right. He's been a good receiver for a long time, but he's fallen off pretty heavily this year. So it's that was the bread and butter for Mahomes. Finding Kelce every time he needed a dump off, and there he was, wide open.
Or what about when they had Tyreek Hill to at least bail out Travis Kelce? Now they don't have that type of receiver where Kelce can get bailed out. It's basically just him.
Yeah, the only really nice piece they seem to have is that rookie, Rashee Rice.
Right.
Or Noah Gray, that rookie tight end. But
is Gray a rookie? I thought he was been around a couple of years now.
I think he's a rookie.
Interesting.
Right. No, but you could clearly see, though, as of right now, Kelce's like their entire receiving core. So.
Yeah, but like I said, you can only take so many hits over so much time, and I mean, I still fear him, and certainly better make sure you know where he is on the field at all times. But I think it has taken its toll on him, and of course, he was on my fantasy team this year, so that's a good reason for a decline. But seriously, I think. Again, the wear and tear that you were talking about there, Steve, I think is legit. And, it's definitely got to be tougher for him.
Yeah, he lost a step for sure.
Yeah. But, okay, so now let's give our predictions for next week's game. Joe, do you want to go first?
All right. It's a little scary here. I think, it's going to be very, very close. And I'm at the beginning of the year, I saw this game and I picked the Bills to win it, and I'm going to stick with that. My official prediction here is Bills 27, Dolphins 24. But it's funny. I just, again, my recurring nightmares here. We were talking about the refereeing. Why do I just get the feeling that it could come down to a bad call against the Bills that goes against them and costs them the game? I just have that thought hanging in the air, and I'm again hoping and praying it doesn't come to fruition here. But again, the official prediction for me: Bills 27, Dolphins 24.
Okay, Steve.
So my prediction is going to be a little different. I think matchups are everything, and I think we match up very, very well against the Dolphins. Patriots, we don't. They always seem to give us trouble, no matter how bad their team is. except for that playoff game. We'll just, that was a one shot, which was amazing. But I think that the final score of this game is actually going to be 35-17 Bills.
Wow.
I think the Dolphins they're already locked into the playoffs. I've been listening a lot this week saying, they might want to give Jalen Waddle a rest, and they just lost their second best pass rusher, and their first one's already gone. And that takes a lot of pressure off the tackles to not have to worry about Chubb or Phillips, and they can focus on Wilkins in the middle. And, Xavier Howard probably not going to play, they're saying. So I think that the Dolphins might just be a little too banged up for this game. And the Bills the Bills need the 2 seed. They need that. They need that home field. They need it bad. And, they do click well against the Dolphins. So I think it's actually going to be a little bit of a blowout. I've been wrong before, but I've also been right before. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you, Steve. We always seem to match up really well against the Bills, even earlier in the year where the Dolphins were 3-0 and we were 2-1. I knew there was no way we were going to lose that game because Miami wasn't playing anybody at the beginning of the year. And that's the theme with Miami. They always beat up on these bad teams, but they never really seem to show up against the good teams. So I got the Bills winning 35-24.
Very good. And to say that too, I was going to mention, you mentioned like the desperation factor there. I said that a couple of weeks ago with the Bills and the Cowboys, with Dallas coming in here, Dallas could afford to lose that game, whereas the Bills really couldn't. And the Bills played with that desperation, with that back against the wall, like you were talking about there before. And so that could factor into this game as well. The Dolphins, not that they're going to try to lose it. I mean, they certainly want to win the division that they've had for most of the year. But if the Dolphins can still lose this game, they're in the playoffs. Whereas the Bills, I don't see Jacksonville losing. I don't see Pittsburgh losing just because of the situation with the Ravens and already clinching the first seed. So I honestly think, going into this game, the Bills are going to have to win it. And that, I think, could be another factor here besides the fact that the Dolphins are missing some key players. And again, the Bills in this type of situation are more experienced, than the Dolphins are. But, that's why I definitely think the Bills win, but I think it's going to be closer than we think. I certainly hope you guys are correct. But again, it just hopefully, the Bills can get it done and get that number 2 seed that we never, ever saw coming 6 weeks ago.
Exactly. And they better do well this week. We're counting on them.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, now let's take a look at the 425 Cincinnati Bengals at the Kansas City Chiefs game. The Chiefs held on to win 25-17 to clinch their 8th straight AFC West title and earn the number 3 seed in the AFC wildcard playoffs. Steve, did you see this coming?
I mean, I did see it coming, but I think that I don't think I've ever been more disappointed in other teams in a division than I am in the AFC West. I feel like this is the year that one of those teams should have passed the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. When the Chiefs were struggling, look at all of us as AFC East, right? The Dolphins, the Jets, and the Bills. We were chomping at the bits for the Patriots to have a struggling year, and they really didn't until Brady left. They even had a good year when Brady got injured. They went 11-5.
Right.
So I think my disappointment level in the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders is extremely high because you have your shot this year. And I'm disappointed in the Bills because they should have beat the Broncos and the Patriots and the Eagles, and they should be, going into a 14-3 season, which could be the 1 seed. But they kind of, choked away some games. So I think with this game, I'm not surprised the Chiefs won it. I'm just surprised that nobody's even come close to challenging them for it, even on a down year. I know the Broncos were close, but they were still yet so far, in my opinion, from challenging, and the Raiders were just a little too late on playing well, and the Chargers are just the Chargers every year. I'm just blown away that every single year we come in, we're like, no matter who the Chargers have, we're like, wow, the Chargers are going to be really good this year, and there's a little thing in the back of your head, be like, they're the Chargers though, they're probably not, and they always live up to that. They never seem to be good. So it's the Chiefs are underwhelming, but they won their division for eight times in a row, and I think that has a lot to do with the coach and their quarterback. So,
Joe, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said there. And again, I told you my fear about the Chiefs, but I thought the Bengals played a good game here. They were fighting. I didn't know how the Chiefs would react. I mean, I saw them either winning this game by 30 and taking their frustrations out on the Bengals, especially after that Christmas loss where they didn't show up against the Raiders. Or was it going to be the same team that was showing a lot of vulnerability? And, the Bengals playoff hopes were very slim, but still, had potentially a shot to stay in it here. So again, I didn't know what to expect in this game. And, when it started, it's like, here's the Chiefs again, looking vulnerable. And it's very possible that the Bengals could steal this. And then what happens with the Chiefs, But they came back nicely. And again, not in a very impressive way, but just had a business as usual win. And, just now they're just kind of stuck in that third seed. I can't go up, can't go down. And again, we'll see what happens from there. But, the Bengals, with losing Burrow and some key players and, I guess I'm not totally shocked that they're where they are. I mean, they still compete and do their best and have beaten some good teams, but, just fell short this year. So, again, we'll see what happens with the Chiefs there. And again, I'm hoping that this trend continues as far as them playing unimpressively and receivers dropping passes and stuff. But don't be surprised again if that spark happens and they go far.
Do you guys think Jake Browning has a job starting somewhere next year?
I think he could. Depends.
Are there a lot of teams looking for quarterbacks? I believe there are, so I would not be surprised to see him. I think he would deserve it. I think he's somebody you can count on, and he's proven that. So, I would not be surprised if that happened, to be honest with you.
I also think he could sign with a team that he could be a bridge for Caleb Williams or Drake May or some of the other quarterbacks out there, Michael Pratt, some of the other quarterbacks that are going to be in the 2024 draft as well.
For sure. Yeah, he could end up being similar to like Fitzpatrick or something, just a little bit of a journeyman that goes out and holds the gate open until someone comes in there to get the starting position or something. So he's got the skills to do it. I think he's actually a pretty decent quarterback. So
yeah, and I was thinking too, he might end up on a team that maybe has a quarterback competition. Maybe where a team's not sure. I can't think of any offhand at this point, but going into camp, a team that's, hey, we're not sold on either of our quarterbacks. Bring him in and maybe compete for a starting job. Yeah. So
could go on the Raiders. Raiders might look at him.
Right. That's a possibility. So, it'll be interesting to see, but I certainly think he's deserving of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so guess what? It is now time for our question of the week segment. Steve, would you like to try out the question this week?
Yep.
Okay, Steve, so here's your question. Can you guess this NFL team? They've had 2 Super Bowl appearances since 2010, and they've had the 5th most playoff wins since 2010. Is it the Broncos, the Rams, the Seahawks, or the Ravens?
What was the first stat? 2 Super Bowl appearances?
Yes.
Since 2010.
Yep.
Broncos. I'm going to go with the Rams.
Nope, that's incorrect. Joe, would you like your try?
Who are the teams you mentioned again?
The Broncos, the Rams, the Seahawks, or the Ravens?
Well, I know the Seahawks were in there twice, 2 years in a row. And I think their other appearance was before that. The Broncos, I'm going to go with the Seahawks.
You are correct. It was the Seattle Seahawks, and those 2 Super Bowl appearances were back-to-back. In 2013, they beat the Denver Broncos 43-8 in Super Bowl 48, and then the second one, they lost at the goal line by Malcolm Butler when Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll decided to throw the ball from the 1-yard line there.
Mm-hmm.
With Marshawn Lynch as his running back.
Right.
Exactly. I know.
I think I've despised Pete Carroll ever since then. Like I just can't. I can't find it in my heart to like the guy. Like what an idiot. Sorry for saying that, but man, come on.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I think it goes beyond that. He's not dumb enough to do something like that. At least I don't think so. I don't know how or where that call came from, but should have never happened.
No, you're right. 100%.
Right. So now I'd like to turn our attention over to the leaders of the NFL teams, the coaches. Let's talk about who has been a force with their teams and should be taking the credit for it. So let's start with the head coaches. Number 1, we have Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Browns. With Stefanski bringing the Browns to the playoffs for the first time since the 2020 regular season, he has helped the offense flourish no matter who started at quarterback. Joe, what do you think about Coach Stefanski?
All right. Well, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag right now. If I had a vote for Coach of the Year, he would be it. Because, there's other great coaches we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes here. But of all the coaches, he's Coach of the Year, in my opinion, just because, again, a team that wasn't expected to do anything, a team that's had to deal, again, they had everything built around Deshaun Watson here. And, with him going down and other people, Nick Chubb going down, and yet, keeping this team together. Yes, they have an amazing defense, and that's held steady all season. Just keeping things together and the team atmosphere that we talked about before. And, this team just is getting better as the year goes on. It's not like they peaked at a certain point and, okay, now teams are figuring them out and, they're on a down trend. They're getting stronger and better as the year goes on. And again, without some key players. So, I definitely admire the job he's done, and I think Stefanski has a lot to do with the Browns' success here.
Exactly, Steve. What about you?
I really couldn't agree more. He's taken. What are they on their third quarterback, right?
Third or fourth? Is it fourth?
Maybe. Well, they had Deshaun Watson. They had that
Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and now it's Joe Flacco. So it's their third.
Yeah. Their third quarterback, their second running back, and their first running back was an all-pro, probably one of the best running backs in the league. He went down. And even last week to beat the Jets, and their best receiver was gone. Amari Cooper wasn't in there from what I understand. And they take David Njoku, who is, I think he's a great tight end, and a cool story too, because I know he had that where he got burned pretty bad. So, for him to come back and play the way he's playing, and Stefanski, I think, Joe, you said it perfectly with keeping the team together without them crumbling or falling apart. Like when you lose your quarterback, right? What are the Bills without Josh Allen, right? Or what are the Chiefs without Mahomes? And, one of them goes down. What are we looking at, right? We're looking at a team probably saying, all right, let's focus on next year. And Stefanski said, we got a good enough defense. Let's just keep it together on offense as best we can, and we'll be there. And they've been there in every game. So I think there's I really don't think it's even going to be a question for Coach of the Year. I think it's got to be him. If it's someone else, I will honestly be really shocked.
Right. I admire the job Stefanski's doing. I admired him when they first hired him back in 2020 after they fired Freddie Kitchens, which everybody knows that experiment was a disaster. No culture. Everybody was infighting with the team. Baker wasn't Baker yet, but then when Stefanski took over, he just basically said, okay, we're going to play within the system. We're going to play within the team's culture, and they did, and they were able to get to the playoffs that 2020 year during COVID, beat the Steelers, and then they moved on from Baker and have kept the train rolling this year with Watson and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson and now Joe Flacco. And the defense has just been absolutely amazing under Jim Schwartz. I got to give credit to where it's due. The job that Schwartz has always done as a defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Sure.
And now let's move on to our second coach, Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. Now that Campbell has finally brought a winning culture to Detroit, he is the kind of coach the players like to play for. So, Steve, how do you think Campbell fits in Detroit?
I think he's a little nuts. I think he's a good coach, and I think that, when you have some talent on your team, which he does, and I think he actually did a phenomenal job using Gibbs and Montgomery at running back. Did one of them get injured by any chance? Did Montgomery go down, or is he okay? Because Gibbs has kind of taken that role now and become the lead dog on that one. So
I just think Montgomery's been losing reps, and
I'm not aware of any injuries.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Gibbs has just been playing better than them recently.
But I think Campbell is. I think he's a great coach. I definitely think we'd be at number 2 with him for Coach of the Year candidates and voting. Mm-hmm. And I heard him. I was listening to, because I was up so early this morning, I was listening to After Hours with Amy Lawrence on WGR. She's on from like 4:30 a.m. until 6 a.m. And she played some clips from Campbell, and he said, well, Saturday happened. It was not the right call. We're moving on. And he said, and I'm just letting that fuel me for the next game and for the playoffs. And I think that he's beat that into his players too, that, don't do a pity party. Nobody wants to see a pity party with a team. Everybody wants to see you take that energy and, throw it into your next win and your next game and, take it out on them, without being violent, but like take it out on them, like run up the score if you have to, like use your very talented team. I think Aiden Hutchinson is a phenomenal player. Yep. And I think their offense it's actually a pretty scary offense. I mean, there's a lot of weapons on that team. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is good. Sam Laporta, what a find there. Mm-hmm. And Jared Goff is doing enough. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I think he's very good. I think he's similar to Kirk Cousins, if you ask me, in the way they play the game. But Dan Campbell, again, he's nuts. He's a crazy guy. But I think that the players love him, and they will go to war for him. So that's what you want as a coach and your players, is you want your players to be willing to go to battle for you. So,
and Dallas fans liked him too back in 2005 when he was a tight end for the Cowboys with Jason Witten and Bill Parcells then. Yep. He was actually not a bad tight end, but he's turned out to be a better coach. So at least he found his calling card there. But Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said here. He'd probably be my second choice as well. Just if I'm a fan of an NFL team, I want a coach who's a fighter. I want a coach who's aggressive. I want a coach that's going to stick up for his players. And Dan Campbell does all of those, and again, that's why, the players will run through walls for him. And, again, he's another one that even through adversity will keep the team together. And again, he argued and stood up for his guys and stood up for his team the other day after, the bad calls. And again, the play didn't work out, but I don't mind him, taking some risks. I mean, sometimes, maybe he overdoes that a little bit, but again, I'd rather, somebody like that than somebody who's too wishy-washy or who won't take the risks or is not aggressive enough. So, I have nothing but good things to say. And again, there was a lot of expectations on this team, and again, and people, a lot of people, including myself, were not sold on them. And they could have easily, got caught up in the hype and went the other way and played like the Detroit Lions, that we've typically seen by them through history. But I very much admire the fact that Dan Campbell didn't let that happen. And, he kept them, their heads level and, and had them say, okay, let's take the next steps instead of just resting on last year's success. And that was unexpected. And the team has responded and done very well.
Exactly. Dan Campbell, he's a guy that doesn't rest on his morals. He didn't rest on it after his first year, and he definitely didn't rest on him last year, and he certainly didn't rest on him this year because he's got that team play very well, and I would consider him another Coach of the Year candidate just behind Stefanski because he's a crazy guy, but he's our crazy guy. It's what the NFL needs. He's a fun, crazy guy.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Now let's move on to number 3. And speaking of crazy, but then the flair for the dramatics, let's talk about John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens. This is probably Harbaugh's best team that he has had. The one thing hampering them is the dreaded injury bug. While still making the playoffs 3 out of the last 4 seasons, they are still looking good. So, Joe, what do you think of your thoughts on Coach Harbaugh and the recent success of his brother Jim beating Alabama in the Rose Bowl yesterday?
Yeah, and I'm boycotting the college football playoff because of their stupidity against Florida State. But yeah, kudos to Michigan there. And but as far as in Baltimore, I mean, I think he's proven himself throughout the years. And there's been other years too where he's had to deal with injury and difficult situations, and it seems like even though their team's not as strong as it is this year, they're always competitive and they always find ways to at least be in the mix there in the end. So this year, I think the only reason I wouldn't consider him for Coach of the Year is because even in the beginning of the season, I thought he had a Super Bowl caliber team here. And, the Ravens are certainly playing like that. They're the number 1 seed in the AFC. I won't be sold on them yet, though, until they win a couple of games and progress, because remember, this happened a couple of years ago, too. I forget what year it was, maybe 2018 or so, where the Ravens were the number 1 seed and got bounced in the first round there. So at home. So, you got to be weary about that. And, it makes me wonder, too, we'll see what kind of a coach he is based on what he does on Sunday, because, they're going to have a bye and they've already got everything wrapped up, and I'm hearing things that they're going to be sitting players, but is that smart? It's as a coach, it's a tough call. If he plays some starters and somebody gets hurt, then, his head rolls. But if these guys don't play this week and then they got next week off, you're coming in cold against a team that's won their last game, that's a little dangerous. So I'd be very curious to see how the Ravens handle this. But again, Harbaugh's proven himself over the years. And even this year, I mean, he's had some tough injuries, with Dobbins going down early, with Andrews being gone for a good part of the year here. And yet the train is still rolling, and I think that has a lot to do with the guys on the field, especially Lamar Jackson, who would be my MVP candidate right now. But, definitely Harbaugh's doing an amazing job, coaching this team and keeping them playing at this Super Bowl level. But I think his greatest test is about to come up, because, again, if this team falls short early again, I think there's going to be some questions there. So we'll see. But, definitely – on the grading scale, since I'm a teacher, Harbaugh still gets an A.
Okay, that's fantastic. Steve, your thoughts?
Similar, I would say to Joe what he's got going on with the fact that he was kind of expected to be good, I think actually hurts his reasoning for someone to put him as Coach of the Year. Mm-hmm. So I think that he's a great coach. He's got a really good team. I never really ever had a problem with Harbaugh as a coach. I think he just kind of does his thing, and they've just kind of been doing their thing all season long. But again, it was expected with them, with that roster, with that talented. They have a very, very good defense as well. Mm-hmm. And their offense, they gave Lamar the weapons he needed. Unfortunately, he lost his favorite target in his tight end, but it just goes to show what Lamar can do with his receivers, which he never had before, with Flowers and Odell and, and then there's the one other receiver. I can't remember his name. What's his other receiver's name?
I know, I'm trying to remember too, and I'm blanking.
Anyway, I do think that he's a great coach, but again, he really hasn't had adversity like Stefanski's had. If Lamar went down and he kept this winning record and, did all that with his backup QB, who we saw in the playoffs a couple of years ago when Lamar went down, then I think you have a different conversation for him as coach of the year. But I don't think there's going to be many votes for him as coach of the year because it doesn't necessarily always go to the best record, right? I mean, sometimes it does. Unless you're playing Madden, then it always goes to the best record, the coach of the year every time. But I think that Stefanski's done too much with so little, and Harbaugh's done plenty with a lot, if that makes sense. So I think that that's why Stefanski outshines Harbaugh in this case, as well as Campbell, because Campbell hasn't really suffered many injuries either on his team, and obviously the main one being the quarterback. So I think that's where you look at coach of the year, what you did with what you have, and Stefanski's done way more with way less.
I agree with that assessment, Steve. I like the Harbaugh family, though. I think they're definitely a flair for the dramatics, the arguing the calls. They're nutty, but they're a fun bunch as well. And Jim's done well in college, and John's done well with the Ravens. I mean, you wouldn't have football without the Harbaughs. So they're
good for the sport, that's for sure.
Right, and Jim did great in the pros too. So
he was San Francisco's coach for how long?
For several years.
He was there from 2012 to 2015, I think it was. Yeah, 2015. Okay.
So it's a couple of years. Okay. I thought it was longer for some reason. But
I thought it was about 4 or 5.
Those were the years when the Bills
2011,
were bad. So
2011,
football time went much slower because the Bills were bad.
That's right.
Well, now it looks like we are coming to the end of our show. So, Steve, where can we find you in this social media world on the second day of January of 2024?
2024. So you can find me at Bill's Car Guy right down the bottom. I'm on Twitter. Well, X, formerly known as Twitter. I guess we'll call it that. I still call it Twitter. I still say I put out tweets. I don't. Yeah. But that's where you can find me. I'm on there. I love talking Bills. I love connecting with fans from all teams. I'm not going to be anyone who really trash talks much. I just kind of enjoy camaraderie with fans from all over the globe. And that's where you'll find me having most of my conversations with people, obviously where I met you guys. And, I love interacting with people on there, and, I'll keep it positive. That's a promise.
Exactly. So, Joe, where can we find you?
I am also on X Twitter at Joe Dell Sports. Not only Bill stuff, but you said it's January. So that means 2 of my favorite sports going on, basketball, hockey. I like to talk about those as well. And you can find me there. And again, I should interact more with people on there. I like keeping things positive too. And, we'll get some more of that on there too.
And then always you can find me, yours truly, on Bill's Chat 1 at Bill's Mafia Chat, and at Jamie Malloy, the unbiased journalist, at DJ Dogtans on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I still call them tweets or posts, whatever. And also you can find me at DefiantTakesFootball.com, where I'm writing articles about the Bills, Syracuse football, and I'm also writing about the new UFL spring football, as that's going to be merged between the XFL and the USFL. And the first game is March 30th, 2024, as the reigning XFL champion Arlington Renegades will square off against the 2-time defending USFL champion Birmingham Stallions in the first season of the merged league. So you don't want to miss that. And also check out my Syracuse football stories on head coach Fran Brown and the success of his recruiting powers so far. So thank you very much for listening, folks. And remember, the Cowboys are back in first place in the NFC East. The Bills have a big game against the Dolphins this Sunday night. And Shane Steichen has exceeded his expectations as head coach for the Colts. And to quote our favorite Bills Mafia friend, Chris Berman from ESPN and NFL Primetime, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Happy New Year, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Happy New Year. Good night.
Happy New Year, everybody.
To rock this place. Hey! Hey!